Hello, Americans. If we clear our minds, they have been replacing what's actually recorded at all locations slash s. Forgiveness is because this is only capable of being relative to employments of narratives and or natures and or the difference of it being the physical language, fact treatments, or the nature that's used to force a quality of fact treatment nature that can't defend itself and afford us proper counters at all locations, areas, and states to that which employ black pupils and whites of eyes to communicate other than nature communicates with it, for a breaching method which employed all natures of difference roles as styles of logic, natures of logic that can't defend themselves and afford to be, let alone to protract. Now, the difference between the overt criminal enterprises, transnational ones, or the three branches as criminal insidiousness, or the intelligence tied to them, or the difference of names at, next to, and how and why next to, the state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices, how we are a value slash value progression system slash S. See the nature of intelligence, they surveil people for years, collusions with predicate acts with facts, screening what really most furthered and worse use slash S of the worst criminal enterprises and private ones, including as and or uses of criminal insidiousness, like for example, where they want. I heard someone, even if it was just someone speaking out of whatever they would describe it. In other words, they were saying that they wanted to have 10 years in prison for who would be caught for calling in a threat at schools. See, the schools have a concentrated roles, also the malls, with people who also interbranch on all sides of criminal and civil cases and the news at the same time, and all on and off and has collusions with all natures of crime scenes, including with a hyper foreign name that we could observe have remote had and has remote sense and sensibilities of the adults and of the kids of foreign countries and of our own shared here and there and directed to hide how roles with uses of words like crime, corrections. Out of the state of Connecticut corrections offices, our names increasingly involved with body dumping spots and with confessions to me from strangers who then pretend that they made a statement to me or and they're spying on us through our own. And they're increasingly having conversations that are criminally foreign influenced with our teachers behind our backs as Americans relative to where and to how, too. Other things, others ourselves, is communicated for what nature shows us is most probable and practical and proper to describe, with questions about American history and world history that nature asks us to ask ourselves. What was slavery about? Slavery was about the breaching method entrenched. A scientific value our founders also communicated for us to understand. They also communicated for us to understand how no one had free speech and everyone was forced to pretend others simultaneously and or else to be sentenced. Not just by the crazy laws, not just by the collusions between the people with the crazy laws and the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones, and roles and news, all natures of communications, locations, and the difference between that. The difference between foreign and domestic. See, Russians and Americans have natures of industries like with psychiatry and their roles with like with law. There are lawyers for retired Weathersfield police chiefs. And there's a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, a former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence of Corrupt Organization Act, who is involved with predicate acts methods, predicate acts with fax methods, with mail, with wire crime methods, including in digital, including replacing what's actually digitally recorded, remote criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought uses of the Facebook pages of Hartford courts, of New Britain Superior Court, of child campuses. So they're making debates about things, leaving out what came first and the extent of the collusion / S with that roles. Because there are natures of organized crime, roles that are simultaneously reliant upon roles of predicate acts with facts methods. Self-value. If you want to put people in jail for 10 years, especially jails that are still criminally foreign influence, collusions with the difference between that and the court also used when they're making fact treatments as collusions with the names at crime scenes and the killers and the killed. Even when correct, they're attaching them, using it for them for other cover-ups and collusions. Also, as roles with a torture method before the World Trade Center attack, that it was effectively used to pull off. Also, we have criminally foreign influence readings of the Old Testament and of the Quran per science, which is relative because we have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw experts. A doctor of modern languages, a Dr. Shu, is involved with probate court judges, with places on off two-route highway, involved with wire crimes, with intelligence families, associated with and as one's named on. O'Brien and Cololo, who have been planting evidences with different police reports roles, falsified police reports, wire crime acts and methods roles, planting fake motivations as their roles with the other countries involved, and their teachers. See, the intelligence community has roles with kids. With this breaching method knew that they never had possession of their identity. They have roles with styles, needs, and natures as predicate acts, fact, treatment, nature, styles. Needs and natures forced by nature demonstrated. See, but those demonstrations, this breaching method used and uses that instead to show the formal identities of the law. They need to hide what they're actually capable of being discerned as. For example, such as criminal insidiousness nature, and as delusions wrought and criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature, quality, aspects of nature's being and having been used remotely, while they pretend others, screening also the rest of the name / S involved. There are overt criminal enterprises and private ones. There are Afghan leaders and kids who colluded through time on and off and between campuses, also with the Wethersfield town offices, and Whiting forensics increasingly involved with the same people, with retired police chiefs and their lawyers and lawyers of the FBI, and locations associated with a Robert Chevrier, a lawyer of a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their neighbors and their family members also have been planting campus evidences roles and with uses / S of that at campuses and between them, identity theft, fraud, slanders, styles against A through Z are manifest for known reasons. Everyone missed how juxtaposed, only capable of being and maintained to screen actually, even worse and really evil, even when there are good motives. And more and more only capable, the only means to make positive value nature progressions, acts and natures out of negative ones, only capable of increasingly being as we are an identity, the ground identity of relationship to itself and the value of that, not hyper pure. It shows us Native Americans have a problem with rights, representation, and voicings, because that means A through Z have a problem. See, but we're not appreciating that breaching method that was against them sickly distinctly, against the colonists sickly distinctly, against the state sickly distinctly. We pay attention to that. It shows how even those who had means to know, the only way to control it is to give a new nature of beliefs that nature shows us how to do, not a made up nature of beliefs, injunctive beliefs for the voicings of individuals, including as leaders. Because any leader could only come to a leadership if they're going to entertain locations, areas, and states, styles, needs, and natures of fact shaping nature as collusions with predicate acts with facts. So, propagation and maintain self cultivated roles with its system method. So the Facebook has people personally and professionally, and the difference between Facebook's roles, whether it's for the police or the FBI, because they all have roles with it with a principal upskirt nature, and they have roles replacing and changing phone records and what's actually recorded at schools, and they're hiding the motivations. The news recorded that one's countering roles of men going in girls' bathrooms and things like that. All those natures of instances they bring before courts, they have collusions with worse. They had these interbranch families have roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. They're pretending has to do with their roles with acting professors legitimately. In other words, trying to be unmarked police forms. They're calling this out. There are names on Church Street in Old Wethersfield who will tell you they had roles with federal evidences, crimes on my street from those other parts of town, as the ones involved increasingly with the Cololo O'Brien planting fake evidences and wire crime acts and methods, screening their motivations and roles with people from foreign and domestic military, like Koreans. There are Koreans with a Rocky Hill Athletic Center, recorded confess, demonstrate. I believe they're Korean, or there's some like in other words, they're involved with people named Kerr and tomorrow, with houses near me on Fairlane Drive, and with the Smith family and with the Cololo family with federal evidences crimes, with some child offenders, leaders of kids. I don't even know what school the Smith brothers went to. It was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that there are fire campuses and medical campuses and names associated with them, with their doctors and patients. They run into high lab progressions to make it look like people had conversations, other people observed it. They're planting evidences, hiding what really recorded. All kinds of wire and mail crimes with Hartford Hospital names that are involved with the same houses near me through time. And judges and prosecutors tied to the same house, Cololo and Smith, and their rules with Two Rod Highway and its conjunctions like the Berlin Turnpike and Hangdog Lane and its conjunction to Route 3, which is conjunctive to the state judicial branch offices, in the roles with state police, interstates, through knowingly or not with two. And the difference of that is used where they ask questions to keep use/s of how they force equality of fact should be nature at all formal locations, including the Facebook pages of the campuses. See, these are parties that are forced to make economics where they were not supposed to have left out, not supposed to have roles forcing left out. How the breaching method many ways employed roles with the economy, use/s of it that had nothing to do with that. It had to do with the predicate acts with facts method, the real worst cause of the worst criminal enterprises, because this breaching method needed to hide between them or the three branches of the government or the intelligence tied to them, or how they have a whole bunch of intelligence, foreign and domestic, sick fakes together, tactically delusions raw, because they were child abused relative to their founders too. Their communications replaced. It is discernible that we could discern that the communications of Mao Zedong is replaced because we also have not heard, just like they have replaced our founders' communications and how they were behind James Madison, want to be recognized as him and his plan, and that's what George Washington agreed to help. Not one person allows someone to be honest about how George Washington was extorted or the value of that, even more important, because the breaching method The value of that was per breaching methods use of everything everyone said, used to measure and maintain. There were laws I learned at Central Connecticut State University, even if that was made up. In other words, the slavery was entrenched north and south. So this is only capable of being the value of it. In other words, that if people were found out to be speaking about building infrastructure outside of internationally monitored conversations about it, those people and everyone around them will be hurt, killed, tortured, made examples of. If they were even found out speaking about building it and safer. So they have all natures of difference, titles, things like that, through value nature systems, styles, logic, nature, life. In other words, even the readings of statutes where they leave out the exceptions, exception nature and use /s of that. They were shown that they could discern that. They were shown they need to pretend other. What is what you hear when, like, for example, they have all kinds of distinct natures of organized crime and roles with abuses of and uses of as collusions between overt criminal enterprises and private ones in three branches of government with their uses of innocence or of adult, words like adult, as value. Because they are systems tactically ulterior from how nature communicates. These differences. With these differences, just like our black pupils, whites of eyes, that it shows us there is one identity of volume that can't be mimicked. One way that generates more ways. And when we appreciate those ways together, we are shown revelations, means to evolution's fruits, gifts, and means out of nowhere. Thank you, people. Please understand. Please get this heard. Judge Napolitano. There are proofs that either, whatever's in the databases, I'll tell you, every year of my life and every year other people's lives, there are foreign bodies involved, but there's also a hypervolume foreign body involved. And the people will tell you this, but you have to ask them. You don't even have to ask them. Just get who denies it on paper. And I'll show you how others recorded and they pretended. This is also conscious uses of where and how they put people in other classes, spreading rumors with other people behind people's backs to their educators, where and how, what we're going to be focusing on, because leading up to the World Trade Center attack, in that context and sense, what motivated all sides to roles with it, and use /s of the difference, as the Saudi attackers forced their side to roles with the not just with the attack, with the radical uses and extremism uses, which are used also by the breaching method to measure and maintain. People can't defend their own syntax and afford to be, let alone to protract their own people's syntax with convictions proper. Black people, it is time to see the whites of eyes, and who can't, hyper clear. 10, who disbelieves. So in other words, New Britain Superior Court and Hartford courts have roles with federal evidences crimes with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in his defendant capacities. Also with the lawyers, intercities, its roles with collusions on off the state capitol. And as ones involved on off the state corrections offices and the state judicial branch offices. Increasingly, people there recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles of predicate acts with people named Khalil and Ray Reynolds, and their roles with various police departments and all sides of criminal and civil cases, and with the family members of judges and prosecutors planting fake ties and fake natures of ties to people, using rights to lie to family members of people about them, increasingly pretending its integrity of investigations through. In other words, they have the terrorists use of those groups. Everyone's delusions are up with the readings of the Old Testament and the crowd, the sciences, let alone they both have parts that dictate how to interpret those books. But it would change the way everything is defended. It would change the way, with all exceptions still, it would show everyone's using exceptions, tactical ulterior. from how nature shows us to appreciate exception nature and the relativity of it, and of a special difference to this value/value progression system we are with location/S and hyper additional relativity per our names to the databases of the republic for which we stand, which has stayed abridged. And so all use/S of names A through Z, many ways discernibly, we're going to observe the motivations. Forgiveness is because there is a semi-ancient name that is not A through Z, that nature itself shows us to blame. And the syntax with that brings natures of relief to natures of people, names hurting each other as groups too. Because what really maintains such has been the hyperforeign. It's recorded clear as day. Many pray. There are uses of overt criminal enterprises and private ones with the names next as the use of the location/S at and next to Hartford Hospital. These aren't legitimately roles with the military, with the criminal enterprises and unmarked police forms, and their roles with the elements of such. Fear God. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. Stop leaking, because then all we're going to do is talk. It's all about the use of locations. They're refusing to identify themselves. That's why I keep speaking about this stuff. They're leaking. Don't blame it on me. I'm not supposed to hide those things. In other words, I only know this too. In other words, you got people that you got people that weren't even in my classes planting evidences on off the campuses. They're doing this with medical families and against the kids that they do speak with. They're putting them in faked and changed communications with others. These are doctors with badges. Their whole family members. You should fear God to hide and plot. I rap a lot. Get on paper, one name and sequence. They have remote uses of Judge Napolitano's Facebook page distinctly from Judge Janine's. Fox News, please help. CNN, please help. Do mandated law. Do it here because they're using wire mail crime methods. Faked conversations with me at the police department when I was a kid or anywhere else. They faked it. And the kids that they did communicate with, they were plants to make it look like I was tied to them. And they forced them, even Chris Walters gave me an affidavit, they forced them to change them to fake what they said. And they planted their roles, leaving that out, their roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. In other words, and I didn't say anything about that. In other words, that's why you're supposed to have the right to remain innocent. They've been torturing people to prevent that and to screen their roles with the use/S worst of the overt criminal enterprises and private ones. So there are people associated with, per them, Los Solitos and other criminal enterprises involved with former police chiefs, like one named Cintron, involved at the corner of Elm Streets in Weathersfield and Rocky Hill with Mazzucato family, and with a modern pastry involved with a Jonathan Maiano, involved with some sexual and medical offender, criminally foreign influence roles with the educators growing up. Mr. Hegenbart is one of the names involved with them. And I never had a personal conversation with him. There are proofs that he might have pretended other, because a whole bunch of people tied to him between the campuses who have been planting predicate acts with fax rolls, leading up to the World Trade Center context, in that context and since. Before the World Trade Center attack, corruption of Hartford courts, New Britain Superior Court, and Connecticut's District Court affected confessions and requests to help to me from an Eric Burgess as one of the Homeland military families. Also by his family with the confessions as strangers. Also with a Justin Kovinskis and a Mark Violet as people who have roles intercities planting evidences with the FBI and other countries' military, overt criminal enterprises, private ones. A Dean Judd's son is also one of the ones they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with it. And so Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut had roles with the World Trade Center attack And they have rules with prosecutors and judges that are forging and switching names and putting fake things in database on a mass scale. And as ones that were in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center the day of the attack, and their rules with the names that were next to that location, involved with predicate acts with facts, and they forced Saudi's rules, and the difference too was used. But all sides don't have a side that could defend themselves because they have been use/s of our names, A through Z, through an ad systems tactically ulterior from the one that is reality proper, while they pretend other. How they get away with this is relative to what I caught them doing with the databases at each campus I went to. There are a whole bunch of educators tied to a Ray Reynolds and people involved with medical corruption with kids, and Kevin Harris, his mother, and him have roles with prosecutors and judges planting evidences and medical families. Rick Ciampaglione is also one of the ones who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Tim O'Brien and Ray Colol's family. Tim O'Brien, Andrew O'Brien, and their parents. And they have other family members. Also, these are people with Sandy Hook involved with various natures of organized crime and federal evidences, crime, identity theft, fraud, slanders. See, now they want to pretend they can't even report on stories now that influences their stories. Because now it looks like they're trying to make establish unmarked police forms with the name O'Brien. And they showed a guy getting beat up by police or something like that. In other words, these are people who have timed roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Since I was a kid, we could record. This is recorded. But to appreciate it, you have to have who denies it get on paper. These are also the people switching names and forging names of the Wethersfield police and the courts, lying about their motivations. Because before I forced people to call the police to let them record themselves further, which they did. They attached me to fake conversations with themselves and others, forging names of foreign and domestic doctors. Get them on paper. One name is a sequence. As the ones like that Leahy family. There's a Leahy family, a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital involved with a Colella, O'Brien, and Rick Ciampaglione with drugs and medicines, crimes with doctors, with kids, and overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and with retired Wethersfield police chiefs, foreign and domestic military, people at the sides of the campuses too, planting evidences, federal evidences, identity theft, fraud, slanders, like Covington Street next to Central Connecticut State University. They have people as in adults that confirm this. That were used since they were kids for federal evidences, crimes with judges and prosecutors personally and professionally criminally involved with them. All kinds of methods they have recorded, including wire crime acts and methods. When do the police have integrity? See, they have problems with the borders because they have differences racketeering. They already did. They already had all sides in criminal and civil cases, the news, and the courts forcing the same sequence shift, self-valued, etc. And screening of foreign names involved, because there's a hyper foreign name involved, not because the foreign names are involved, because the nature shows us that we are a bound species body while we are simultaneously independent individual bodies of an individual species body, with all group differences and demonstration of the hyper difference that is generated and will continue to generate the value of the seasons, for example, that which has not come here yet, but that we know will come. Even if it doesn't come, its value is only increasing. Nature answers our questions and how to explain how logic and reason works. The people at Hartford Hospital and New Britain, other hospitals, they're involved with the same house/S, involved with wire crimes and falsified police reports with multiple police departments. So and religious locations. There is a Mike Demain who sought me out to confess and demonstrate, record, confirm. He has roles with a brother named Adam Demain. I never met him, and he has roles with his religion and which is Jewish, reportedly, and how Miss Riley had that religion, and she said that my she brought up sexual things about my neighbor. I didn't respond to it. So they tried to make a fake exception of me knowing him or having communications with him because I had a couple classes with him, but I never had communications with him in the class. And they're trying to they made a fake exception where they can't be honest about the exception. These are also people who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, had collusion with organized crime with the families associated with the security at the schools. I don't know the guy. There was a guy named John. He recorded, confirmed, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He's involved with some judges' family members, involved with the kids with the side of the school. And a Fred Grisette, who went to a different school, who's one of the ones involved with the Jonathan Maiano and the police chief's family members, and extended family like the Mazzucato Bakery, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, and falsified police reports, wire crime acts and methods, mail crimes with the police chief Cintron and 1 years ago, as his roles with houses near me. And they're also pretending it's personal because they brought this up. I mind my own business. They're lying with anything they try. They need behavior. They need to have an instance, civil or criminal, because they're caught. They've been, in other words, these are the ones too. They said that was their cousin, one of the ones involved with the Wethersfield police wire crimes and switching names. They said their name was Scalora. Now there's a officer who forced himself through my door. I want to know what his narrative was because I didn't respond. And he made a confession tied to the name Scalora. These are also ones that were next to the World Trade Center that day. DeMauro also said that was he had a cousin named Scalora and made confessions about the World Trade Center. These are people that have been planting evidence since they were kids, including totally made up in their roles with home break-ins, that were timed collusions with people from other countries, and roles with the difference of who's guilty with that, as they forced Saudis to collusions with them too. Wethersfield police have World Trade Center predicate acts, Connecticut State Police, interstates with people named Cololo and DeMauro, that a Scalora family also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with them with planting evidences in courts, including these are people next to the World Trade Center attack with the Ninth Circuit Court and other spots next to it associated with the ones named Scalora and interstates. Something to do with people along Franklin Avenue and Wethersfield Avenue have been planting evidences, and then investigators of that too. They ask questions and things to test if things were true or not. It has something to do with that. None of that stuff is true. In other words, including that if they pretend that I don't know that they were communicating that. The Central Connecticut State University has a CCSU magnet school on Franklin Avenue that is involved with people also on Franklin Avenue is this Connecticut Corrections Offices who had roles with the World Trade Center predicate acts. Many people tied to the same house /S with wire crimes of the police in the courts refusing to get on paper and switching names and sequences since I was a kid. And in the World Trade Center attack context in the court next to it. They also attached names on all sides of that case. And the court, it was proven after they post-dated from inside the case. So they have predicate acts against me in the whole country, in the whole world, roles. And they forced Saudi's exclusion of the difference of that too. And with the uses of the religious nutbags and styles, replacing what's recorded too. And the nature of debate with this too. Because you guys put me in conversations about religions too now with these people. Increasingly at Harvard Hospital has a whole bunch of people involved with wire crimes with a Kevin Dillon and an Anna Dillon. And I don't know Anthony Minacchio. And there are courts, judges, and prosecutors and their family members who have him involved with my neighbors, and they're attaching me and him to fake and change. In other words, that was the first time I ever saw him on my street in my life. I want privacy more than everyone else. Some ways until. In other words, the people are lying about privacy. That's why they don't get on paper. It's criminally foreign influence. I mean, it's sick to pretend that you guys want privacy and then brings up prevent stuff from being on paper because you already stacked fake things in paper on a mass scale, and you already stacked U/S of it. Even Dean Alford, even Dean Judd. Dean Judd's kids have a recorder, even if they made up that wasn't his kid. That's a federal crime to do that. As the people involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, on off spots next to Central Connecticut State University and next to that. And the difference was his use too. Increasingly, Gail King has people, and I don't know her at all. She has roles with investigations. Investigators use remotely criminally foreign influence with some black KKK themes in all these different countries, cultures, where they use it with the difference racketeering, worse than war crimes, relative to where and how replaced and roles with it, replaced and self-valued, replaced is what our founders communicated for us to communicate about that predicate acts with facts delivery system method, which is distinctly from what they said. They communicated for us to understand about how what everyone said was measured and maintained. Use by the breaching method to show everyone else they had to hide. Roles with U/S of their collusions with the breaching method, even though it was forced. See, the uses were too. But no one was allowed to explain that because everyone was supposed to pretend other. That's the law is forced. And they're still forcing that. There's all kinds of medical corruption involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, the worst. Because they're putting things in databases fake to keep cover-ups of things. They use all natures of investigations, investigators, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, black pupils. Please get them on paper, one name and sequence. Let's go. Mandated law. Says don't hide and plot. I'll rap a lot.